Mother-in-law stole my wedding dress to give to her daughter, so I wore my late mom's instead. Now she's crying that I ruined the family. I never thought I'd be writing one of these posts, but here I am, 3 days after what should have been the happiest day of my life, still trying to process the absolute nightmare my mother-in-law created. I'm still in shock at how someone could be so devious, especially to a person their son chose to marry. For some context, I, 28F, married my husband Jake, 30M, last weekend after being together for 4 years. We've had a relatively smooth relationship, supportive of each other's careers, same values about family and our future, all the good stuff. The only real problem has been his mother, Diane. From the day Jake introduced me, Diane made it clear I wasn't the woman she had envisioned for her son. She was polite enough in front of Jake, but whenever we were alone, she'd make these little comments. Jake's ex was such a fantastic cook, or Jake always said he wanted to marry someone who came from a large family like ours, or my personal favorite, I always pictured Jake with someone more traditional. I tried not to let it bother me. Jake was aware of her behavior and would shut it down whenever he witnessed it. We limited our visits with her, and I thought we had reached a sort of uneasy truce. I was wrong. So very wrong. When Jake proposed, Diane's behavior got worse. During wedding planning, she tried to take over every decision, from the venue to the flowers to the guest list. She even scheduled cake tastings without consulting us, then threw a fit when we went with a different bakery. Jake was constantly running interference, trying to keep the peace while also respecting my wishes as the bride. But the real problems started when I found my wedding dress. I'd gone shopping with my best friend and Jake's sister, Amy, who I actually get along with really well. After trying on probably 20 dresses, I found the one. It was a beautiful lace A-line gown with delicate beading and a sweetheart neckline. The moment I put it on, I just knew. Both my friend and Amy teared up, confirming what I already felt: this was my dress. The dress wasn't outlandishly expensive, but it was still a splurge for me. I saved for months to afford it. When it finally arrived, I was ecstatic. I kept it at my apartment in a garment bag in my spare closet, taking it out occasionally just to look at it and imagine our wedding day. About a month before the wedding, I had to travel for work for a week. When I returned, everything seemed normal. Until 2 weeks before the wedding, when I decided to try on the dress one last time before taking it for final alterations. The dress was gone. At first, I thought I was losing my mind. I searched every closet, under the bed, in my storage unit, everywhere. It was just gone. I called my roommate, who had been home while I was away, but she swore she hadn't seen anyone come in or take anything. I was in full panic mode, trying to figure out how I was going to find another dress in just 2 weeks. Then I got a call from Amy, Jake's sister. "Leah, I need to tell you something, and you're not going to like it," she said, her voice shaking. "I just saw Megan trying on what looked exactly like your wedding dress." Megan is Diane's daughter from her second marriage. She's 24 and got engaged about 3 months after Jake and I did. We're not close, but I never had issues with her before. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "What do you mean?" Amy explained that she'd stopped by Diane's house to drop off some items for the wedding and walked in on Megan twirling in a wedding dress, my wedding dress, while Diane looked on proudly. When I asked what was going on, Mom said she'd rescued the dress from your apartment because she thought it would look better on Megan than on you, Amy said, clearly horrified. She actually had the nerve to say it was meant to be because Megan was having trouble finding a dress she loved. I couldn't breathe. My $3,000 wedding dress that I'd saved for months to buy, that was perfectly fitted to me, had been stolen by my future mother-in-law to give to her daughter. It was too unbelievable to process. I immediately called Jake, who was as shocked and furious as I was. He drove straight to his mother's house to confront her. According to him, Diane didn't even try to deny it. She actually defended her actions, saying the dress would be put to better use on Megan, who was having such a hard time finding the right dress. When Jake demanded she return it, Diane claimed it had already been altered to fit Megan. Whether that was true or not, I'll never know. What I do know is that she refused to return it, and Megan refused to give it back as well, saying her mom had gifted it to her and she'd already fallen in love with it. Jake was ready to call the police and file a theft report, but I was too exhausted and overwhelmed. With just 2 weeks to go, I needed to find a solution, not create more drama. That's when I remembered my mother's wedding dress, still preserved in a box at my father's house. My mom passed away when I was 15, and I'd always thought about possibly wearing her dress someday. I'd initially decided against it because it felt too emotionally charged, but now it seemed like the perfect solution. The dress was vintage 1980s, slightly puffy sleeves and a high neckline, definitely not what I'd originally envisioned. But when I tried it on, something felt right. My dad cried when he saw me in it, saying I looked just like my mom on their wedding day. I decided this was meant to be. Fast forward to the wedding day. Everything was going smoothly until Diane arrived. When she saw me in my mother's dress, her face twisted into an ugly scowl. She marched up to me just before the ceremony began. "What are you wearing?" she hissed. "That's not the dress you bought." I looked her straight in the eye. "No, it's not. You stole that one, remember?" This was my mother's dress, and I think she would be proud to see me wearing it today. Diane's face went pale. You can't wear that. It's outdated. What will people think? You'll embarrass Jake. I think Jake will be more embarrassed by having a mother who steals from his bride, I replied, keeping my voice calm but firm. She stormed off, and I didn't see her again until the ceremony. During the reception, she sat at her table looking miserable, barely speaking to anyone. Several guests commented on how special it was that I was wearing my late mother's dress, which only seemed to make Diane more upset. The final straw came during the speeches. My dad gave a beautiful toast about my mom and how happy she would have been to see me finding love. He mentioned how special it was that I was wearing her dress, and that it felt like a way for her to be present on my wedding day. There wasn't a dry eye in the house, except for Diane, who looked like she'd swallowed something sour. When Jake's dad got up to give his speech, he also mentioned how lovely it was that I had honored my mother in such a beautiful way. Family traditions and heirlooms are what bind us together, he said, not knowing the irony of his words. That's when Diane stood up and walked out. Jake's dad faltered but continued his speech. Most people probably thought she was just emotional or needed the restroom, but Jake and I knew the truth. After the wedding, Diane has been on a rampage. She's called Jake multiple times a day, texted me paragraphs about how I humiliated her in front of the entire family, and even reached out to Jake's extended family to tell them how I manipulated the situation to make her look bad. The latest drama came last night when she showed up at our apartment. We're delaying our honeymoon for work reasons. Through tears, she accused me of ruining the family and turning everyone against her by wearing my mother's dress instead of finding another solution. She said people were now questioning why I hadn't worn my original dress, and she was being forced to lie to protect me. Jake asked her to leave, telling her that she needed to apologize to me before she would be welcome in our home again. She left sobbing, saying we were breaking her heart and destroying the family. This morning, Jake's phone has been blowing up with messages from his aunts and cousins, some asking what really happened with the dress situation, others defending Diane and saying we should forgive her because she's still processing losing her son to another woman. I'm exhausted. What should have been one of the happiest times of our lives has turned into a family nightmare. Jake has been amazing, standing firmly by my side and shutting down anyone who tries to defend his mother's actions. But I can tell he's stressed about the family drama. Amy called me this morning to check in. She told me that Megan is now having second thoughts about using my dress for her wedding, realizing how inappropriate the whole situation was. Too little, too late, if you ask me. The weird part is, now that I've had time to reflect, I'm actually grateful for what happened. Wearing my mom's dress turned out to be incredibly meaningful, more so than I ever expected. It felt like she was there with me, and the photos of me in her dress are something I'll treasure forever. In a strange way, Diane's terrible behavior led to something beautiful, but I'm still struggling with how to move forward. Jake wants to limit contact with his mother until she sincerely apologizes to me, but I worry about the long-term implications for his relationship with his family. I don't want to be the reason he loses that connection, but I also don't know if I can ever forgive Diane for what she did. For now, I'm trying to focus on the good parts of our wedding day and our new life together. Jake has been my rock through all of this, and I'm incredibly grateful to have a husband who stands up for me. As for the dress situation, I've decided to have my mom's dress professionally preserved as a family heirloom. Maybe someday, if we have a daughter, she might want to wear it for her wedding. And if not, that's okay too. It will still be a precious reminder of both my mom and the day I married the love of my life. I still can't believe this actually happened. Who steals a wedding dress from their future daughter-in-law? What kind of person does that? I've been replaying the events in my head, wondering if there were signs I missed, warnings I should have heeded. The most baffling part is that Diane seemed to genuinely not understand why what she did was wrong. In her mind, she was solving a problem. Megan needed a dress, I had a dress, so she reallocated it. The fact that the dress was mine, that I had paid for it with my money, that it was fitted to my body, none of that mattered to her. Jake says his mother has always had a bit of a blind spot when it comes to Megan. She's the youngest, the only daughter, and came along when Diane was in her 40s. Diane has always given her whatever she wanted, often at the expense of her sons. But even knowing that, Jake says he never imagined she would go this far. Yesterday, I received a text from Megan. I was surprised, as we hadn't spoken since the wedding. Her message was unexpected. I'm sorry about the dress. I knew it was wrong when Mom brought it home, but I was too scared to stand up to her. I should have given it back. I'm not going to wear it for my wedding. It wasn't right, and I'm really sorry. It was the first genuine apology I'd received from anyone in the family, and it took me by surprise. I thanked her for the apology and told her I appreciated her reaching out. It doesn't fix what happened, but it's something. Jake's dad called him this morning. Apparently, he had no idea what had actually transpired with the dress until Jake's aunt filled him in. He was horrified and assured Jake that he would talk to Diane. It's the first time he's ever really stepped in with her behavior, as he usually prefers to keep the peace by letting her have her way. I'm not holding my breath for a genuine apology from Diane. Based on her behavior so far, she seems more concerned with how she looks to others than with the hurt she caused. But at least there seems to be some accountability beginning to form within the family. Amy has been an unexpected ally through all of this. She sent me photos from the wedding yesterday, beautiful candid shots that her husband took. In one, I'm looking down at my bouquet, the vintage lace of my mom's dress catching the light just so. Amy included a note, "You were the most beautiful bride, and your mom would be so proud. Diane can go kick rocks." It made me laugh for the first time in days. Jake and I had a long talk last night about boundaries moving forward. We agreed that we won't be spending holidays with his mother unless she apologizes and shows real change. It's going to be complicated, especially with the rest of the family, but it's necessary for our marriage. "You're my family now," Jake told me. "You're my priority. My mother needs to understand that her behavior has consequences." I've been getting messages from wedding guests, all commenting on how beautiful the wedding was, how moving it was to see me in my mother's dress, how they could feel the love between Jake and me. None of them know the drama behind the scenes, and I'm thankful for that. For all of Diane's concerns about appearances, the irony is that everyone thought the wedding was perfect. The only person who embarrassed herself was her. So that's where things stand now. I'm still processing everything, still trying to find a path forward that respects both my boundaries and Jake's relationship with his family. It's complicated and messy, but isn't that what family is sometimes? One thing I know for sure, I married the right man. Despite all the drama, despite his mother's behavior, Jake has been unwavering in his support. He's chosen me, chosen our marriage, chosen our future together. And for now, that's enough. Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since my last post, and a lot has happened. First, I want to thank everyone for the supportive comments and messages. It's been a difficult time, but knowing others understand what I'm going through has been incredibly helpful. The biggest update is that Diane finally returned my original wedding dress, sort of. Jake's dad showed up at our apartment with a garment bag, saying Diane wanted to make things right. When I opened the bag, I found my dress. With significant alterations. The hem had been shortened by several inches. I'm 5 feet 8 inches, Megan is about 5 feet 2 inches, the waist had been taken in, and some of the beading around the neckline had been removed. It was clearly unwearable for me, but Diane had sent a note saying she hoped this resolved the issue and that she expected to be welcomed back into the family now that she had returned my property. I just stared at the dress, unable to process the audacity. Jake was furious. He called his mother immediately, asking if she genuinely thought returning a completely altered dress was making amends. According to Jake, she seemed genuinely confused, saying she had given back what I wanted. When Jake pointed out that the dress had been altered to fit Megan and was useless to me now, Diane apparently said, "Well, you can sell it and buy another one. I don't see the problem." Jake's dad was mortified. He apologized profusely, saying he had no idea the dress had been altered. He offered to pay for the dress, which I declined. It wasn't about the money, it was about the violation and the complete lack of remorse or understanding. After Jake got off the phone with his mother, he was quiet for a long time. Then he told me he thought it was best if we took a break from any contact with her for a while. "Maybe a few months of silence will help her understand the gravity of what she did," he said. I agreed, but I have my doubts. Someone who could steal a wedding dress, give it to her daughter, then return it altered and expect to be thanked is not someone who seems capable of self-reflection. The next day, I received a surprising call from Jake's older brother, Mark. He and his wife live in another state and have limited contact with Diane for reasons that are now becoming very clear to me. Mark apologized for not warning us about their mother's behavior, saying he thought she might behave better with Jake since he was always her favorite. "She pulled similar stunts at our wedding," Mark said. "She wore white, tried to change the menu the day before, and told everyone who would listen that Lisa, his wife, wasn't good enough for me." He went on to explain that they now see Diane only once or twice a year and always in public settings where she's less likely to cause a scene. It was both validating and sad to hear that Diane's behavior wasn't unique to me. It's a pattern, and one that has damaged her relationships with both her sons. As for Megan, she sent me another text apologizing and offering to pay for the dress. I appreciated the gesture, but I told her it wasn't necessary. "Just learn from this," I wrote back. "Don't let your mom's behavior dictate your actions in the future. She seems genuinely remorseful, and I don't want to punish her for her mother's actions, especially if she's trying to make amends." Jake's extended family has been mixed in their responses. Some have reached out to express support and apologize for initially believing Diane's version of events. Others have maintained that we're being too harsh, that family should forgive family, and that Diane didn't mean any harm. One particularly annoying cousin sent a long email about how I was tearing the family apart over a piece of fabric and should be the bigger person. Jake replied with a simple, "When someone steals $3,000 from you, let me know how quickly you forgive them." We haven't heard back from that cousin. In happier news, Jake and I have finally booked our honeymoon for next month. After all the drama, we decided we needed something to look forward to, a chance to reconnect and remember why we got married in the first place. We're going to spend 2 weeks in Greece, far away from wedding dress drama and family politics. I've also decided what to do with my original dress. A friend connected me with a charity that provides wedding dresses to military brides who might not be able to afford one otherwise. Once I get the dress professionally cleaned, I'll be donating it. It feels like the right thing to do, taking something that caused so much negativity and turning it into something positive. As for my mom's dress, I've kept it preserved in a special box with photos from the wedding. It turns out that wearing it was the right choice, not just because of the circumstances, but because it connected me to my mom on one of the most important days of my life. Sometimes good things really do come from terrible situations. I still don't know what the future holds for our relationship with Diane. Part of me hopes that this time apart will help her reflect on her actions and come to understand the hurt she caused. The more realistic part of me knows that people rarely change so dramatically, especially at her age. For now, Jake and I are focusing on building our life together, creating our own traditions, and establishing healthy boundaries. It's not the post-wedding period I imagined, but we're getting through it together, and that's what matters. Update 2. It's been about 3 months since my last update, and the situation with Diane has evolved in ways I never expected. First, the positive news: Jake and I had a wonderful honeymoon in Greece. 2 weeks of crystal clear water, amazing food, and not a single mention of wedding dresses or difficult in-laws. It was exactly what we needed to reset and remember why we chose each other in the first place. When we returned, tanned and relaxed, we found out that Diane had been busy in our absence. The mother of all flying monkeys had been dispatched to plead her case, attempt to guilt us into forgiveness, and generally create chaos. But she'd also done something completely unexpected. Diane had started therapy. According to Jake's dad, who has become surprisingly communicative lately, Diane's behavior after the wedding, and the subsequent cutting of contact by both her sons, triggered something of a breakdown. After going through what he described as a very difficult few weeks, she agreed to see a therapist at his insistence. I was skeptical, to say the least. It seemed more like another manipulation tactic than a genuine attempt at self-improvement. But Jake's dad assured us that she was attending weekly sessions and had even acknowledged, to the therapist, not to us, that her behavior regarding the dress was perhaps an overreaction. An overreaction. As if stealing a $3,000 wedding dress was on par with sending a snippy text message. Despite my skepticism, Jake was cautiously optimistic. This is the first time she's ever admitted any fault, he told me. Even if she's downplaying it, it's something. We maintained our no-contact boundary, but Jake did agree to read the letters his mother sent. They were interesting. The first few were typical Diane: justifications, subtle blame shifting, and vague non-apologies like "I'm sorry you felt hurt by my actions." But the more recent ones showed hints of actual reflection. She used phrases like "I understand now and I regret my behavior," which Jake said she had never done before. About a month after we returned from our honeymoon, Jake received a call from his therapist, asking if he would be willing to participate in a session with Diane. He was hesitant but ultimately agreed, on the condition that I would not be involved at this stage. I was grateful for that boundary. I wasn't ready to face Diane yet, therapeutic setting or not. The session was apparently intense. Jake came home emotionally drained but also thoughtful. He said his mother had broken down crying, admitting that she had always struggled with jealousy of other women in her sons' lives. She confessed to sabotaging Mark's relationship with his wife early on and recognized that she was doing the same with me. She said she's been talking to her therapist about her own mother, who was apparently extremely controlling and critical, Jake told me. She's starting to see patterns in her behavior that she never recognized before. While I was glad to hear that Diane was gaining some insight, I remained cautious. People can say all the right things in therapy and still revert to old behaviors when triggered. I told Jake I was happy for him if this represented real growth for his mother, but that I wasn't ready to re-establish contact yet. He completely understood and supported my decision. "This is about her growth, not about forcing you to forgive her," he said. "You get to decide if and when you're ready for that." Then came another surprise: Megan broke up with her fiancé. Apparently, the dress incident had triggered some serious conversations between them about family dynamics and boundaries. Her fiancé, who comes from a very healthy, functional family, was horrified by Diane's behavior and Megan's initial complicity. He told her he couldn't marry into a family with such toxic patterns unless she was committed to breaking them. This led to Megan doing some soul-searching of her own. She eventually came to the conclusion that she wasn't ready for marriage and needed to work on establishing her independence from her mother first. It was a mature decision, if a painful one. She reached out to me directly, asking if we could meet for coffee. I was hesitant but agreed, partly out of curiosity and partly because her texts had seemed genuinely remorseful. Our coffee meeting was surprisingly heartfelt. Megan apologized again for her role in the dress incident, this time face-to-face where I could see her sincerity. She explained that she had spent her entire life trying to please her mother, even when she knew what her mother wanted was wrong. "I watched how she treated Mark's wife, then how she treated you, and I just went along with it because it was easier than standing up to her," she said. "Then I realized I was becoming just like her, and that terrified me." She told me she had also started therapy and was working on setting boundaries with Diane. She had even moved out of Diane's house and into an apartment with a friend, which was apparently causing Diane significant distress. "She's called me selfish at least 20 times, Megan said with a sad smile. "But for the first time, I'm not letting it get to me. I know I'm doing what's right for me. I found myself feeling a strange sort of kinship with Megan. We had both been damaged by Diane's behavior, albeit in very different ways. I told her I appreciated her apology and her efforts to grow. As for the infamous wedding dress, it's now being worn by a military bride in Texas. The charity sent me a lovely thank you note and a photo of the bride in the altered dress, looking absolutely radiant. It was closure of sorts, knowing that the dress that had caused so much drama was now bringing joy to someone else. Jake's relationship with his mother is slowly improving. They talk on the phone occasionally, always with clear boundaries, and he's attended a few more therapy sessions with her. He says she seems genuinely committed to changing her behavior, though he's realistic about the fact that it's a process that will take time. I've agreed to eventually meet with Diane in a therapeutic setting, but not yet. I want to see sustained change first, not just words but actions that demonstrate she understands the gravity of what she did and is committed to respecting our boundaries moving forward. In the meantime, Jake and I are settling into married life and focusing on our future. We recently started house hunting, looking for a place that will be truly ours, filled with love and free from drama. The dress incident will always be a painful memory, but it's no longer defining our lives. In a strange way, it accelerated necessary changes in Jake's family dynamics that might have taken years to address otherwise. And I'll always have the photos of me in my mother's dress, looking radiantly happy on the day I married the love of my life. No one can steal that from me.